Donald Trump is taking the stand in his family's New York civil fraud trial. That's happening today.
Trump is the first U.S. president to testify as a defendant in a court trial in more than 100 years. The former president is accused of inflating his wealth and property values to get favorable loan and insurance terms. The judge in this case already found Trump and others liable for fraud, you might remember, earlier this year. This trial centers on other allegations, including falsification of business records, conspiracy, and insurance fraud.
Before entering the courtroom, Mr. Trump took to a microphone and denied any wrongdoing, also took the opportunity to attack Attorney General of New York, Letitia James. She had a response ready to go.
It's a terrible, terrible thing. These are political operatives that I'm going to be dealing with right now. You have a racist attorney general who made some terrible statements, and we just see some more that came over the wires today. It's a very sad situation for our country.
At the end of the day, the only thing that matters are the facts and the numbers. And numbers, my friends, don't lie.
CBS News investigative reporter Graham Cates joins us now from a place he's very familiar with outside the courthouse in New York City. Graham, you were there. Talk to us about, perhaps in summary, what Trump's testimony has been all about so far.
Hi, Lily and Tony. You know, this was as combative as you can imagine. Trump was frequently lashing out at the judge and the attorney general who was sitting in the room, pointing at the judge, saying that the judge himself was the fraud for the decision you referenced earlier, and criticizing the attorney general's lawyer who was questioning him. It was very reminiscent of some of his debate performances. Long-winded answers, a refusal to just say yes or no to a question, and a constant combative tone toward both the judge and the lawyers who were questioning him.
You were in court just a few moments ago to watch the Trump testimony, and I'm curious, did anything that came out of the president's mouth help him in the legal case as opposed to the public opinion political case?
You know, I don't think it's for me to say if anything helped or hurt him, but, you know, there was an interesting thing, which was that he kept insisting that some of these valuations that the judge has already ruled were overinflated. His own net worth was overinflated. These property valuations were overinflated over the years. Trump kept saying he disagreed with them now, that, in fact, those inflated valuations were too low. And at the center of this trial is whether or not these statements that they gave to banks and insurers were accurate. And there was Trump on the stand saying that he thought they were inaccurate, that they should have been higher. I don't know if that helps or hurts his case, Graham, but it definitely was something that hadn't been argued yet.
Hold on, Graham. All right, so the judge in this case has already ruled prior to the testimony that fraud occurred in the estimation of these properties. Now we're in the damages and penalties phase of things. Former president comes forth because he's got to testify. If he doesn't, there'll be no appeal, no chance for defense, and he could lose his business. And his case is, yes, I admit those numbers are wrong and they're too low. Do I have that right?
Yeah, I mean, not said exactly in those words, but he insisted over and over again. They went kind of property by property through the ones that are part of this case. And when he was shown the valuations, you know, from 2014, this property was worth $291 million, according to your company. He kept saying, I believe that's too low. You know, now that I look at it, I think it should have been higher.
That is a wild thing. Let's call back the professor from Columbia, Mr. Coffey. I would love to know what a legal expert thinks about that. How could that possibly help his case? Maybe. I don't know.
Maybe it's just, you know, he's standing by the general assumption that was
he's expanding.
Back then.
What's interesting is he's increasing the distance between what the judge has already ruled and what he thinks reality is, right? He's not narrowing the gap or accounting for, after the fact, what might have been some mismatches. He's expanding the difference.
You can't expect him to approve of or agree with what was stated before. But let's talk about his sons, because they took the stand last week in this case. Did Don Jr. and Eric's testimony shape in any way what Trump had to respond to today?
You know, they were actually really different from him. Both of the sons insisted that the accountants who worked for the Trump organization were the ones who were to blame, and there was some of that from Trump himself today, but there was a greater insistence that these valuations, in fact, he kept insisting that these statements in themselves weren't very important, so why are we even talking about them? Not so much that the accountants got everything wrong, but that this wasn't a big deal. In fact, he kept coming back to this disclaimer on page 1 that said, you know, if there's anything wrong about this, make sure to do your own due diligence. He kept saying that disclaimer is the thing that makes this document valueless.
Well, that sounds like a legal defense to me. Saying that the numbers were wrong and they should have been even higher, maximizing the difference is a different kind of approach. I'm very curious about that approach.
But he's still standing by the election being stolen, so it's not
he
very
sticks
different.
to cases and expands difference. He doesn't seek to minimize. We do know that about the former president. Ivanka Trump, his daughter, is expected to take the stand. This should happen on Wednesday. Any preview? What can we expect there?
Yeah, she was originally named as a defendant in this lawsuit, but eventually she was taken off the case because of statutes of limitations. Now she's expected to be questioned about some very specific deals that we know she was involved in. She took the lead on the Washington, D.C. old post office project for Trump. She also oversaw his golf club in Doral, Florida. And so these two projects are going to be, we expect, at the center of what she's questioned about. It shouldn't be nearly as broad as his two sons, Eric and Donald Trump Jr., nor, of course, what Trump himself is currently undergoing.
Well, we will be watching your reporting. Graham Cates, thank you.